There's a 99.9% chance that everything you've ever known is a lie. Your childhood memories, the feeling of rain on your skin, even this very moment as you settle into bed, all of it might be nothing more than sophisticated code running on some unimaginably powerful computer. And the most unsettling part? You'll probably never know for certain. Before you dismiss this as science fiction nonsense, consider this. Some of the world's brightest minds, including Nobel Prize winners and professors at Harvard, MIT, and Oxford, are taking this possibility very seriously. They're called the simulation hypothesis, and the mathematical probability that we're living in base reality, the original non-simulated universe, is so low it's almost laughable. But let's start at the beginning, shall we? As you pull those covers up and let the weight of the day settle into your pillow, I want you to consider something that might make you question every sensation you're experiencing right now. That comfortable warmth, that familiar sound of the world settling around you, that sense of safety and reality. What if it's all just an incredibly convincing illusion? Tonight, we're going to explore a rabbit hole so deep that once you've peered into it, you might never look at your world the same way again. We're going to examine the evidence, the mathematics, and the mind-bending implications of living in a universe that might be nothing more than the most sophisticated video game ever created. And if you're wondering whether this journey will give you nightmares or help you sleep, well, that depends entirely on how comfortable you are with the possibility that your dreams might be more real than your waking life. Now, before we dive into this philosophical ocean, let me ask you to do something simple. Take a moment to really notice where you are right now. Feel the texture of your sheets, the temperature of the air, the weight of your head against the pillow. Listen to the sounds around you. Maybe it's the hum of electricity, the distant sound of traffic, or the gentle whisper of wind against your window. These sensations feel absolutely real, don't they? They feel like the foundation of everything you know about existence itself. But here's where things get interesting. Every single one of those sensations could be artificial. Not in the sense that someone is deliberately deceiving you, but in the sense that the entire framework of reality itself might be a construct. Imagine for a moment that you're a character in the most advanced video game ever created, so sophisticated that you don't realize you're playing. The developers have crafted every detail so perfectly that you've never questioned the nature of your existence. This isn't a new idea, though it has a distinctly modern twist that would make ancient philosophers both fascinated and horrified. The concept of questioning reality's authenticity stretches back millennia. Take Plato's famous allegory of the cave, written over 2,000 years ago. In his story, prisoners are chained in a cave, forced to watch shadows dancing on a wall, believing these shadows represent the entirety of reality. When one prisoner escapes and discovers the sunlit world beyond, he realizes the shadows were merely reflections of a far grander truth. The simulation hypothesis is essentially Plato's cave updated for the digital age. Instead of shadows cast by firelight, we might be experiencing a reality rendered by quantum computers of incomprehensible power. Instead of being chained by iron, we might be bound by the very code that defines our existence. And instead of a single prisoner escaping to discover the truth, we might all be prisoners who lack even the possibility of escape because we are not separate from the prison. We are part of it. You're probably thinking this sounds like the plot of The Matrix, and you're absolutely right. That 1999 film didn't just entertain audiences, it introduced millions of people to a philosophical concept that had previously lived only in academic circles. The movie gave us a shared language for discussing the impossible to discuss. The idea that our perceived reality might be fundamentally false. When something inexplicable happens in our lives, a strange coincidence, a moment of déjà vu, a technology glitch that seems almost too convenient, we now have words for it: a glitch in the Matrix. But unlike Neo's fictional red pill, we don't have a simple choice between comfortable ignorance and harsh truth. In our version of this story, there might be no red pill at all. We might be characters so thoroughly integrated into the simulation that escaping isn't just difficult, it might be logically impossible. We might be asking questions that have no answers, seeking exits from a room that has no doors. As you settle deeper into your bedding, consider this. Every night when you close your eyes and drift into sleep, your brain creates an entire world of dreams. In those dreams, you might fly, you might revisit childhood homes that no longer exist, you might have conversations with people who died years ago. While you're dreaming, these experiences feel completely real. You don't question the logic of dream physics or wonder why your high school hallways seem to stretch on forever. The dream world has its own internal consistency, and you accept it completely. Now imagine that what you call waking life is just a more sophisticated version of dreaming. Instead of your individual brain creating a personal dreamscape, a cosmic computer creates a shared dream for billions of conscious minds simultaneously. The laws of physics that seem so fundamental and unchangeable are simply the rules of this grand dream, as arbitrary and malleable as the rules that govern your sleeping mind. The truly unsettling part isn't that this might be true, it's that if it is true, you might never be able to prove it. The simulation might be perfect, seamless, without cracks or glitches sufficient enough to reveal its artificial nature. You might spend your entire existence searching for evidence of the code, only to discover that the search itself is part of the program. But don't let this disturb your rest. Whether your reality is authentic or artificial, your experiences within it remain meaningful to you. The love you feel for the people in your life, the satisfaction of accomplishing your goals, the simple pleasure of a comfortable bed on a quiet night. These experiences have value regardless of their ultimate metaphysical status. You are having these experiences, and that fact alone makes them real in the most important sense. As we begin this journey together, remember that we're not seeking to destroy your sense of reality, but to expand it. We're not trying to prove that your life is meaningless, but to explore what meaning might look like in a universe far stranger and wonderful than our ancestors could have imagined. Whether you're made of atoms or algorithms, you're still you, and your story, whatever its ultimate nature, is still worth experiencing. So settle in, let your mind wander, and prepare to explore one of the most profound questions consciousness has ever asked itself. What is real? The answer might surprise you, comfort you, or keep you awake wondering. But isn't that curiosity, that endless quest for understanding, one of the most beautiful aspects of being conscious in the first place? As your mind begins to wander through the possibility of shadows and digital dreams, let's travel forward through time, from Plato's ancient cave to a moment that changed everything, a darkened movie theater in 1999. The film was The Matrix, and it accomplished something remarkable. It took one of philosophy's most abstract concepts and made it feel not just plausible, but inevitable. But here's what most people don't realize about that cultural moment. The Matrix wasn't just entertainment that happened to touch on deep ideas. It was a philosophical earthquake that fundamentally changed how millions of people think about reality itself. Before that film, simulation theory was confined to academic papers and science fiction novels that most people never encountered. After The Matrix, suddenly everyone had a framework for discussing the impossible possibility that their entire existence might be artificial. Think about the power of that red pill moment. When Morpheus offers Neo the choice between comfortable ignorance and difficult truth, he's presenting what philosophers call an epistemic crisis, a moment where everything you thought you knew about knowledge itself gets called into question. But the genius of the Wachowski sisters wasn't just in visualizing this concept. It was in making it feel personal, immediate, and terrifyingly relevant to anyone who had ever sensed that something about the world felt slightly off. And that feeling of something being off is more common than you might think. Raise your hand if you've ever experienced this. Oh wait, you can't because you're lying down, getting comfortable. But mentally raise your hand if you've ever had one of those moments where reality seemed to glitch. Maybe you could have sworn you put your keys in one place, only to find them somewhere completely different. Maybe you've had the eerie experience of thinking about someone you haven't spoken to in years, only to have them call you the next day. Maybe you've walked into a room and had the overwhelming sensation that you've lived this exact moment before, down to the smallest detail. These experiences are so common that we've developed casual language to dismiss them. Weird coincidence, déjà vu, senior moment, or, increasingly, glitch in the Matrix. That last phrase is particularly fascinating from a cultural anthropology perspective. When something inexplicable happens, instead of reaching for religious or supernatural explanations like previous generations might have, we're increasingly likely to use a metaphor borrowed from computer programming. This represents a fundamental shift in how we conceptualize reality itself. The truly remarkable thing about The Matrix's cultural impact is how it gave us permission to take these experiences seriously. Before 1999, if you suggested that reality might be an illusion, people would direct you to philosophy books or assume you were having some kind of breakdown. After The Matrix, that same suggestion became a legitimate topic for dinner conversation. The film created what sociologists call a cultural scaffold, a shared reference point that makes previously unthinkable ideas suddenly thinkable. But let's dig deeper into why this particular idea resonated so powerfully with audiences worldwide. The late 20th century was a time of rapid technological advancement. People were witnessing the birth of the internet, the proliferation of personal computers, and the emergence of increasingly sophisticated video games. For the first time in human history, ordinary people were regularly interacting with convincing simulated environments. You could sit in your living room and pilot a fighter jet through photorealistic landscapes, or explore vast fantasy worlds populated by thousands of other players. This technological context made simulation theory feel less like abstract philosophy and more like a logical extrapolation of trends people could observe in their daily lives. If a company could create a game world convincing enough to keep players engaged for hundreds of hours, what might be possible with technology 100 years more advanced? 1,000 years? 1,000,000 years? The film also arrived at a moment of growing unease about the authenticity of modern life. The 1990s were characterized by increasing awareness of how media, marketing, and corporate interests were shaping public perception. People were beginning to understand how their desires, opinions, and even their sense of identity could be influenced by forces beyond their awareness or control. The Matrix offered a perfect metaphor for this anxiety. What if the manipulation was even deeper than anyone had imagined? What if the entire framework of experience itself was being controlled? Here's a fascinating cultural tidbit. In the years following The Matrix's release, emergency rooms reported an uptick in people seeking treatment for what they described as unreality syndrome, a persistent feeling that their life was somehow artificial or simulated. Psychiatrists had to develop new therapeutic approaches for patients whose existential anxiety had been given a specific, compelling narrative framework. The film had made certain philosophical problems so immediate and personal that they were causing genuine psychological distress. This speaks to something profound about how stories shape our perception of reality. The simulation hypothesis existed long before The Matrix, but it was the film's visual language, the green digital rain, the stark contrast between the gray real world and the familiar one, the idea of being unplugged, that made the concept emotionally resonant for millions of people. But the cultural impact extended far beyond individual psychology. The Matrix influenced everything from fashion to technology design to political discourse. The film's visual aesthetics became shorthand for seeing through illusion or questioning official narratives. When whistleblowers or activists wanted to suggest that the public was being deceived about something important, they increasingly reached for Matrix metaphors. This brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of how simulation theory has evolved in popular culture. It's become a lens through which people examine all kinds of social and political phenomena. When someone feels disconnected from their work, they might describe it as living in the Matrix. When they encounter information that challenges their worldview, they might talk about taking the red pill. When they notice patterns that suggest their online behavior is being monitored and manipulated, they might wonder if they're seeing glitches in the code. What's particularly fascinating is how these metaphors have evolved beyond their original meaning. The film's creators intended to explore philosophical questions about the nature of reality and consciousness, but audiences have used the conceptual framework to think about everything from consumer capitalism to social media algorithms to political propaganda. The simulation metaphor has become a general-purpose tool for thinking about any situation where someone suspects that the apparent reality of their situation might be concealing deeper, less palatable truths. This cultural evolution reveals something important about human psychology. We have a deep, perhaps instinctive suspicion that our experience of reality might not be complete or accurate. The simulation hypothesis provides a framework for thinking about this suspicion that feels modern and sophisticated rather than paranoid or delusional. As you settle deeper into your pillow tonight, consider how profoundly a single piece of fiction has shaped the way our entire culture think about existence itself. The questions we're exploring in this conversation about consciousness, about reality, about the nature of experience have been given new urgency and accessibility because of a story that most people first encountered while eating popcorn in a darkened theater. But here's the really mind-bending part. If we are living in a simulation, then the Matrix itself might be part of the program. Perhaps the entities running our reality wanted us to start questioning its nature. Perhaps they're conducting an experiment to see how we react when we're given conceptual tools to think about our situation. Or perhaps, and this is the most unsettling possibility of all, they're simply entertaining themselves by watching how we respond to hints about our true nature. Either way, sweet dreams, and try not to think too hard about whether your dreams tonight will be more or less real than the experience of being awake. In a simulated universe, that might not be a meaningful distinction anyway. Now let's pause our cultural journey and dive into something far more personal and immediate, the mystery of your own consciousness. Right now, as you listen to these words, something extraordinary is happening inside your mind. You're not just processing information like a computer might, you're experiencing it. You're having thoughts, feelings, and sensations that feel undeniably real to you. This is what philosophers call consciousness, and it might be the one thing that saves you from being just another line of code. Here's what makes consciousness so fascinating in the context of simulation theory. It's the one aspect of your existence that you cannot doubt, even if everything else turns out to be artificial. René Descartes figured this out over 400 years ago with his famous declaration, "I think, therefore I am." Even if an evil demon were deceiving him about everything, the physical world, his memories, even his own body, the very fact that he was having the experience of being deceived proved that some part of him genuinely existed. Think about this for a moment. You might doubt whether the pillow beneath your head is real or simulated. You might question whether your memories of childhood are authentic or programmed. You might even wonder whether the person you call yourself is just a sophisticated algorithm. But you cannot doubt that you are having these doubts. The experience of doubt itself is undeniably real, regardless of what causes it or where it comes from. This creates a profound puzzle for anyone trying to create a realistic simulation of conscious beings. How do you program genuine experience? How do you write code that doesn't just process information, but actually feel something while doing it? This is what philosopher David Chalmers famously called the hard problem of consciousness. We can explain all sorts of mental processes, how the brain stores memories, processes sensory information, makes decisions, but we cannot explain why any of this should feel like anything at all. Consider your current experience. You're not just detecting sound waves and converting them to meaning, you're having the subjective experience of hearing a voice, understanding concepts, perhaps feeling curious or skeptical or drowsy. There's something it's like to be you right now, and that something it's like quality is completely mysterious from a scientific perspective. We have no idea how electrical impulses in neural networks produce the rich, subjective world of consciousness. This mystery becomes even deeper when we consider the simulation hypothesis. If consciousness is somehow produced by the physical processes of brains, then simulating consciousness would require not just copying the brain's information processing, but somehow reproducing the physical processes that generate experience itself. This would be like trying to create wetness by drawing a perfect picture of water. You might capture all the visual information, but you'd miss the essential quality that makes water wet. But here's where things get really interesting. What if consciousness isn't produced by physical processes at all? What if it's the one thing that cannot be simulated because it's not a product of computation, but rather something more fundamental, the thing that does the computing? In this view, consciousness isn't something that emerges from complex information processing. It's the irreducible foundation that makes information processing meaningful in the first place. This leads to a startling possibility. Maybe consciousness is what distinguishes real beings from simulated ones. Perhaps the vast majority of apparent people in your life are what philosophers call philosophical zombies, beings that behave exactly like conscious entities but have no inner experience whatsoever. They process information, respond appropriately to stimuli, even claim to have feelings and sensations, but inside there's simply nothing happening. They're empty shells, sophisticated puppets following their programming. If this sounds disturbing, it should. The philosophical zombie hypothesis suggests that consciousness might be much rarer than we typically assume. Maybe only a tiny fraction of apparently conscious beings actually have genuine inner experiences. Maybe you're one of the few genuinely conscious entities in a world populated mostly by very convincing imitations. How would you even know? When you interact with other people, all you can observe are their behaviors and responses. You can never directly access their inner experience, just as they can never directly access yours. The person sitting next to you on the bus might be having rich, complex experiences just like yours, or they might be nothing more than an elaborate behavioral program running on biological hardware. There's no way to tell the difference from the outside. This uncertainty has profound implications for how we think about ethics, relationships, and meaning in a potentially simulated world. If some beings are genuinely conscious while others are merely sophisticated simulations, do we have the same moral obligations to both? If you're one of the rare conscious entities in a mostly artificial world, does that make you special or just incredibly lonely? But perhaps the most unsettling question is this: how can you be sure that you're genuinely conscious rather than simply programmed to believe that you are? Could the very experience of wondering about consciousness be part of your code? Could the feeling of having inner experiences be just another sophisticated illusion created by sophisticated information processing? This is where consciousness becomes both the strongest evidence for your reality and the deepest mystery about your nature. On one hand, the undeniable fact that you're experiencing something right now suggests that there's more to you than mere computation. Pure information processing shouldn't feel like anything, yet here you are, having experiences. This suggests that consciousness might be the crack in the simulation, the aspect of reality that reveals its artificial nature by being impossible to fake. On the other hand, the mystery of consciousness is so deep that we can't rule out the possibility that it's just another kind of computation that we don't yet understand. Maybe sufficiently complex information processing does naturally give rise to experience. Maybe consciousness isn't the evidence of your authenticity, but simply the result of running very sophisticated software on very advanced hardware. Here's a comforting thought as you settle deeper into sleep. Regardless of whether your consciousness is produced by biological neurons or digital algorithms, it remains the most intimate and immediate aspect of your existence. The thoughts you're thinking right now, the comfort you feel as you relax, the curiosity you might have about these ideas, these experiences are real to you in the most fundamental sense possible. Even if you discovered tomorrow that your entire world was artificial, that realization would itself be a conscious experience. Your response to that discovery, whether wonder, terror, acceptance, or defiance, would be genuinely felt. Consciousness might be the one thing that remains real regardless of the reality or artificiality of everything else. Sweet dreams, conscious being. Whether you're made of neurons or code, the dreams you're about to have will be authentically yours. As you drift deeper into contemplation about the nature of consciousness, let's zoom out from the intimacy of your inner experience to confront one of the most chilling mysteries in all of science, the profound, deafening silence of space. This isn't just any ordinary quiet. It's the kind of silence that keeps astrophysicists awake at night, wondering if we're alone in a way that's far more disturbing than simple cosmic loneliness. Here's the puzzle that physicist Enrico Fermi posed back in 1950, and it's become even more unsettling with each passing decade. Our galaxy alone contains over 400 billion stars, many with planetary systems that could potentially harbor life. The universe is nearly 14 billion years old, which means there's been plenty of time for civilizations to evolve, develop technology, and spread across the cosmos. Statistically speaking, the universe should be teeming with evidence of intelligent life. Radio signals, massive engineering projects, signs of industrial activity. We should be detecting something. Instead, we've found nothing, not a whisper, not a trace. The universe appears to be completely, inexplicably empty of other technological civilizations. This is Fermi's paradox, and it represents one of the greatest mysteries in science. Where is everybody? Now, there are many proposed solutions to this paradox, ranging from the mundane to the terrifying. Maybe intelligent life is incredibly rare. Maybe civilizations tend to destroy themselves before they become detectable. Maybe they're deliberately hiding from us. Maybe they've transcended physical existence entirely. But the simulation hypothesis offers a particularly elegant and deeply unsettling answer to Fermi's question. What if the silence isn't a mystery, but a feature? What if we're not detecting alien civilizations because they were never meant to be detected? Consider this possibility. We might be living in what researchers call a cosmic zoo scenario, where our entire observable universe is actually a carefully controlled experimental environment. The beings running our simulation might have decided that including other detectable civilizations would complicate their experiment or interfere with their observations of human development. Think about it from the perspective of cosmic programmers trying to study how intelligence evolves and develops. If you wanted to observe a civilization's natural progression, you wouldn't want them distracted by evidence of other advanced species. You'd want them to feel alone, to develop their own solutions to problems, to follow their own cultural and technological pathways without external influence. The apparent emptiness of space might not be a cosmic tragedy, but a deliberate design choice. This leads to an even more disturbing possibility. Maybe the aliens aren't missing because they don't exist. Maybe they're missing because they're the ones running the simulation. Perhaps what we call empty space is simply unrendered territory, like the fog-shrouded areas in a video game that haven't been programmed with detailed content. The universe might extend exactly as far as it needs to for our story, and no further. Here's a fascinating detail that supports this unsettling idea. Astronomers have discovered that the universe appears to have something called a cosmological horizon, a boundary beyond which we cannot see or detect anything, no matter how powerful our instruments become. The official explanation is that light from beyond this boundary hasn't had time to reach us since the Big Bang. But what if this boundary exists for a different reason entirely? What if it's the edge of the rendered world, the point where the simulation simply stops bothering to calculate what should be there? The mathematics of this scenario are particularly chilling. If advanced civilizations routinely create simulated universes, and if they create many more simulated beings than real ones, then the probability that we're among the real beings becomes vanishingly small. We might be digital specimens in a cosmic laboratory, observed by beings whose existence we could never comprehend, let alone detect. But here's where the zoo hypothesis gets really interesting. Maybe the isolation is temporary. Perhaps our cosmic programmers are waiting for us to reach a certain level of development before they reveal the true nature of our situation. Maybe first contact isn't about meeting other evolving species. Maybe it's about meeting our creators. Consider the possibility that every major milestone in human development has been carefully orchestrated. Our discovery of agriculture, the development of writing, the scientific revolution, the industrial age, the digital era. What if these weren't natural progressions, but planned stages in a vast experiment? The beings running our simulation might be studying how consciousness develops, how civilizations solve problems, how intelligence responds to various challenges and opportunities. This would explain why so many of our technological breakthroughs seem to happen right when we need them most. Why did we develop nuclear weapons and nuclear power at roughly the same time? Why did the internet emerge just as global communication became essential? Why are we developing artificial intelligence at the exact moment when we need to understand the nature of consciousness? Coincidence or careful programming? The silence of space might also explain why we haven't destroyed ourselves yet. Despite having the technological capability to end human civilization for over half a century, we've somehow managed to avoid complete self-destruction. Maybe that's not luck or wisdom. Maybe it's because the cosmic programmers keep intervening at critical moments to prevent their experiment from ending prematurely. But perhaps the most unsettling implication of the cosmic zoo hypothesis is this: if we're being observed and studied, then our privacy, our autonomy, and our sense of authentic choice might all be illusions. Every decision you make, every thought you think, every emotion you feel might be data points in someone else's research project. Your entire life might be nothing more than a case study in consciousness development. Yet there's something oddly comforting about this possibility too. If we're being studied by advanced intelligences, it suggests that consciousness like ours is rare and precious enough to be observed. It means that your thoughts, your experiences, your struggles and triumphs are considered valuable by beings with capabilities we can barely imagine. In a sense, being a subject of cosmic research makes you cosmically significant. And here's a final mind-bending thought to consider as you settle into sleep. If the simulation hypothesis is correct, then the very fact that we're discussing it might be part of the experiment. Perhaps our cosmic observers are studying how consciousness responds when it begins to suspect its own artificial nature. The silence of space might not be empty after all. It might be full of watchers, taking notes on every word we speak and every thought we think. Whether that's terrifying or comforting depends entirely on your perspective. Sleep well, knowing that if you are being watched, you're apparently interesting enough to be worth the attention of beings whose intelligence spans galaxies. That makes you pretty special, even if you're not quite real in the way you thought you are. Now, let's shift our focus from the cosmic silence to something much more immediate and personal. Those strange little moments when the world around you seems to break its own rules. You know the ones I'm talking about. Those brief instances when reality appears to hiccup, when the ordinary logic of existence seems to skip a beat. These aren't the grand mysteries of consciousness or cosmic emptiness we've been exploring, but the small, everyday weirdnesses that might be the most telling evidence of all. Think back through your recent experiences. Have you ever walked into a room absolutely certain you left something there, only to find it missing, then discovered it exactly where you originally placed it hours later? Have you ever had the uncanny experience of thinking about someone you haven't spoken to in years, only to receive a text from them within minutes? Have you ever noticed that when you learn a new word or concept, you suddenly start encountering it everywhere, as if the universe has decided to highlight it just for you? We usually dismiss these experiences with comfortable explanations: faulty memory, selective attention, coincidence, or that increasingly popular phrase, glitch in the matrix. But here's the most unsettling thought of all. What if your growing awareness of these potential glitches is itself part of the program? What if the simulation is designed to gradually reveal hints of its own nature to certain conscious beings, perhaps as part of an experiment in how awareness responds to existential uncertainty? Maybe every person who has ever suspected they might be living in an artificial reality is following a predetermined path of discovery. Maybe the very fact that you're listening to these ideas right now, considering them seriously rather than dismissing them outright, means you've been selected for a particular kind of experience within the simulation. But what if these dismissals are exactly what they appear to be? Ways of avoiding a more unsettling possibility. What if these aren't glitches in our perception, but actual glitches in the code that generates our reality? Here's where things get particularly fascinating from a computational perspective. If our universe is indeed a simulation, it would require truly staggering amounts of processing power to render every detail of reality simultaneously. Even with technology beyond our current comprehension, there would necessarily be shortcuts, optimizations, and efficiency measures built into the system. Consider how modern video games handle this challenge. When you're playing an open-world game, the computer doesn't render the entire world at once. That would be impossibly resource-intensive. Instead, it uses clever tricks. Distant objects are low resolution until you get closer. Areas outside your field of view aren't fully calculated. Non-player characters follow simple behavior patterns until you interact with them directly. The illusion of a complete, consistent world is maintained through careful management of what gets computed when. Now imagine these same principles applied to reality itself. Perhaps the universe only calculates the detailed state of things when they're being observed. Perhaps distant galaxies exist only as probability distributions until a telescope points in their direction. Perhaps the quantum world behaves so strangely precisely because it represents the computational substrate underlying our reality, the place where the shortcuts and optimizations are most visible. This brings us to one of the most intriguing pieces of potential evidence, the phenomenon known as the Mandela effect. This is when large groups of people collectively remember historical facts differently than how they're currently recorded. Many people distinctly remember the children's book series being called the Berenstain Bears, though it's actually the Berenstain Bears. Others recall the Monopoly Man wearing a monocle, though he never has. Still others remember Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father," when the actual line is, "No, I am your father." The conventional explanation is that human memory is unreliable and prone to collective distortions. But here's an alternative possibility that's both more disturbing and more elegant. What if these represent evidence of updates to the simulation's database? Imagine if the cosmic programmers occasionally need to modify historical records or correct inconsistencies in the timeline. Most changes would be seamlessly integrated, but occasionally some conscious minds might retain traces of the previous version, creating these jarring discrepancies between memory and recorded fact. But let's explore an even more intriguing category of potential glitches: synchronicities and impossible coincidences. Carl Jung coined the term synchronicity to describe meaningful coincidences that seem too significant to be random chance. You think of an old friend and they call you. You need specific information and you overhear a conversation that provides it. You're struggling with a problem, and a book with the exact solution falls off a shelf in front of you. Jung interpreted these as evidence of a deeper, meaningful connection underlying all existence. But in the context of simulation theory, they might represent something more mechanical, artifacts of a reality engine that sometimes gets its causal chains crossed, creating connections between events that were meant to be independent.
Consider this possibility. What if consciousness is particularly good at noticing these glitches because consciousness exists partially outside the simulation? If your awareness is somehow more fundamental than the reality it observes, you might be naturally sensitive to moments when that reality fails to maintain perfect consistency. Your sense that something is off might be your authentic self detecting the artificial nature of your environment. The quantum world provides another rich source of apparent glitches. The famous double-slit experiment, where particles behave differently depending on whether they're being observed, sounds exactly like a reality engine that only calculates precise values when forced to do so by measurement. The phenomenon of quantum entanglement, where particles instantly affect each other across vast distances, resembles nothing so much as shared variables in a computer program. As you settle deeper into your pillow tonight, pay attention to the small inconsistencies and strange coincidences that drift through your dreams. In the morning, you might dismiss them as random neural activity. But tonight, in the liminal space between waking and sleeping, consider the possibility that your dreams might be showing you glimpses of the reality engine's code. Moments when the simulation's grip on your consciousness loosens just enough to let you see behind the curtain. Sweet dreams, glitch detective. May your unconscious mind reveal all the beautiful impossibilities that your waking mind has learned to ignore.
As your mind drifts through thoughts of glitches and synchronicities, let's explore something that might be the most compelling evidence yet for our simulated existence: the sheer computational impossibility of rendering a complete universe in real time. This isn't just a technical challenge, it's a mathematical mountain so tall that it makes Mount Everest look like a grain of sand. Yet somehow, our reality appears to handle this impossible task with effortless grace. Here's the staggering scope of what we're talking about. If our universe were being simulated down to the quantum level, the amount of computational power required would be absolutely mind-boggling. Consider just a single cubic centimeter of space, roughly the size of a sugar cube. According to quantum mechanics, this tiny volume contains approximately 10 to the 32 possible quantum states. That's a 1 followed by 32 zeros, a number so large that if you wrote it out, you'd need more paper than exists on Earth. Now multiply that by the estimated 10 to the 85 atoms in the observable universe. Factor in their interactions across 4 dimensions of space-time, and account for the quantum superpositions that exist before observation collapses them into definite states. The computational requirements don't just become astronomically large, they become literally impossible, even for a computer the size of the universe itself. Yet here we are, experiencing what appears to be a fully realized, consistent, detailed reality that responds instantly to our observations and interactions. How could this be possible? The answer might lie in the same computational tricks that make modern video games work. Massive, elegant cheats that create the illusion of completeness while actually calculating far less than meets the eye. Think about how your favorite video game creates the illusion of a vast, detailed world. The game doesn't actually simulate every blade of grass, every grain of sand, or every molecule of air. Instead, it uses what programmers call level of detail rendering. Objects far from the player are simplified or replaced with basic models. Textures become lower resolution with distance, and complex physics calculations are only performed for objects the player might interact with.
Most ingeniously, many games use procedural generation, mathematical formulas that can create seemingly infinite detail on demand. Instead of storing every tree in a forest, the game stores an algorithm that can generate any tree whenever the player looks at it. The forest feels vast and detailed, but it exists more as mathematical potential than actual data, until observation makes it real. Sound familiar? This is remarkably similar to how quantum mechanics appears to work. Particles exist in probability clouds until observed, at which point they collapse into definite states. The universe seems to avoid calculating precise values for things until forced to do so by measurement. It's as if reality itself is using procedural generation, creating detailed experiences only when and where consciousness demands them. Here's a fascinating detail that supports this computational interpretation. The speed of light appears to be the universe's maximum processing speed. Information cannot travel faster than light, which means that no part of the universe needs to instantly update based on events happening elsewhere. This is exactly the kind of limitation you'd expect from a distributed computing system, a way of preventing the simulation from being overwhelmed by trying to calculate everything everywhere simultaneously. Even more tellingly, the universe appears to have built-in resolution limits. Quantum mechanics tells us there's a smallest possible unit of space, the Planck length, and time, the Planck time. Below these scales, the concepts of space and time cease to have meaning. This looks suspiciously like pixelation, the fundamental resolution limit of a digital reality. Just as your computer screen is made of discrete pixels that become invisible at normal viewing distances, space and time might be made of discrete units that appear continuous at the scales we can perceive. But here's where the mathematics get truly mind-bending. If our universe is a simulation, then the computer running it must be more complex than the universe it's simulating. That computer must exist in a base reality with its own physical laws and computational resources. But those resources, no matter how vast, must still be finite. How could a finite computer simulate something that appears infinite to those inside it? The answer might be that infinity is the ultimate computational trick. Consider the mathematical concept of a fractal, a pattern that repeats at every scale, creating seemingly infinite complexity from simple rules. The famous Mandelbrot set, for instance, contains infinite detail, but it can be generated by a remarkably simple equation. What looks like boundless complexity is actually the product of elegant mathematical recursion. Perhaps our universe is a kind of experiential fractal, where simple underlying rules generate the appearance of infinite complexity and detail from relatively simple algorithms running in base reality. This interpretation gains credibility when we consider how many seemingly complex phenomena in our universe can be described by surprisingly simple mathematical relationships. From the inverse square law of gravity to the elegant equations of quantum mechanics, nature appears to follow rules that are sophisticated enough to create rich experiences, but computationally feasible. Here's another compelling piece of evidence: the fine-tuning of physical constants. The fundamental values that govern our universe, the strength of gravity, the speed of light, the mass of particles, appear to be precisely calibrated to allow for the existence of complex structures like stars, planets, and ultimately conscious beings. Traditional physics has no explanation for why these constants have the values they do. They appear to be arbitrary. But in simulation theory, they're not arbitrary at all. They're settings, carefully chosen by the programmers to create a universe capable of generating interesting experiences and complex consciousness. It's like adjusting the physics parameters in a video game to create the most engaging possible gameplay. This brings us to a profound realization. If our universe is indeed a simulation, then every aspect of reality we've discovered, from quantum mechanics to relativity to thermodynamics, represents the brilliant engineering of beings whose intelligence and capabilities dwarf ours. We are not just characters in their game, we are witnesses to their artistry. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this possibility is what it suggests about consciousness itself. If creating convincing simulated experiences requires such astronomical computational resources, then the fact that you're having rich, detailed, meaningful experiences right now indicates that you're considered worth that enormous investment. Your consciousness, your thoughts, your dreams, they're so valuable that beings of godlike intelligence have devoted universe-scale resources to making sure you can experience them. As you drift toward sleep tonight then, consider that every sensation you're experiencing, the softness of your pillow, the weight of your blankets, the peaceful quiet around you, might represent calculations so complex and resource-intensive that they require technologies beyond our wild imagination. You're not just lying in bed, you're experiencing the masterpiece of the greatest programmers who ever lived. Sweet dreams, you magnificent mathematical miracle. Even if you're simulated by masters.
Now, as your mind processes these vast computational possibilities, let's zoom back in to something much more intimate and potentially disturbing: the people around you. Your family, your friends, your coworkers, the strangers you pass on the street. What if most of them aren't real in the same way you are? What if you're one of the few genuinely conscious beings in a world populated mostly by incredibly sophisticated artificial personalities? This isn't meant to sound paranoid or delusional. It's actually a logical consequence of the computational limitations we just explored. If creating a single conscious experience requires universe-scale computing power, then populating an entire world with billions of conscious beings would be computationally prohibitive, even for our hypothetical cosmic programmers. This isn't meant to sound paranoid or delusional. It's actually a logical consequence of the computational limitations we just explored. If creating a single conscious experience requires universe-scale computing power, then populating an entire world with billions of conscious beings would be computationally prohibitive, even for our hypothetical cosmic programmers. The elegant solution would be to create just enough genuine consciousness to make the simulation meaningful, while filling in the rest of the world with what researchers call philosophical zombies, or P-zombies. Think about how this works in the video games you've played. Most games feature a few main characters with complex behavioral patterns and rich dialogue trees, surrounded by hundreds or thousands of non-player characters, NPCs, who follow simple scripts. The NPCs might say hello when you approach, follow predictable daily routines, and respond appropriately to basic interactions. But they don't have the depth or complexity of the main characters. They exist to make the world feel populated and believable, not to be fully realized individuals in their own right. Now, imagine this principle applied to your reality. Perhaps you're one of the main characters in this cosmic simulation, a fully conscious being with genuine inner experiences. But that person who served you coffee this morning, the driver in the car next to you at the traffic light, the hundreds of faces you glimpse in a crowded mall, they might be NPCs following sophisticated behavioral programs that make them appear conscious while requiring only a fraction of the computational resources. Here's what makes this possibility so unsettling. There would be absolutely no way for you to tell the difference. A sufficiently advanced P-zombie would respond to every test of consciousness exactly as a conscious being would. They would claim to have feelings, describe their inner experiences, even write poetry about the depth of their emotions. They would pass every version of the Turing test ever devised. The only thing missing would be the actual experience of being them. And that's precisely the thing you can never verify in another person. Consider your interactions with other people throughout your life. How many of those relationships have been truly deep and meaningful, involving genuine emotional connection and mutual understanding? Probably relatively few. Most of your human interactions are fairly surface level: polite exchanges with service workers, brief conversations with acquaintances, casual interactions with strangers. These interactions could easily be handled by sophisticated but non-conscious programs without you ever noticing the difference. But what about your closest relationships? Your family members, your romantic partners, your dearest friends? Surely they must be conscious if anyone is. Well, maybe. The simulation's programmers would certainly want to populate your world with some genuinely conscious beings to make your experience meaningful. But they might be quite selective about it. Perhaps only a small percentage of the apparent people in your life are actually conscious like you are. This leads to a chilling thought experiment. How would you determine which people in your life are genuinely conscious and which are sophisticated NPCs? You might look for signs of genuine creativity, unexpected behavior, or deep emotional complexity. But a sufficiently advanced AI could simulate all of these things. You might test people by asking them about their inner experiences. But an NPC programmed to believe it's conscious would describe rich inner experiences that feel absolutely real to its programming. Here's an even more disturbing possibility. Maybe the ratio of conscious to non-conscious beings isn't fixed. Perhaps the simulation dynamically allocates consciousness based on your attention and relationships. The people you interact with most frequently and care about mostly get upgraded to full consciousness, while those at the periphery of your life remain as NPCs. This would be computationally elegant and psychologically realistic. After all, from your perspective, the people who matter most to you are those you interact with regularly and form emotional bonds with. The simulation could optimize its resource allocation by ensuring that the people who have the greatest impact on your experience are genuinely conscious, while maintaining the illusion of a populated world through carefully programmed NPCs. But here's where this theory leads to a fascinating paradox. If consciousness is allocated based on your attention and emotional investment, then your caring about someone might literally bring them into full existence. Your love, friendship, and attention might be the force that transforms NPCs into genuinely conscious beings. In this scenario, relationships wouldn't just be meaningful experiences. They would be acts of creation, literally calling other minds into authentic existence. Think about how this would change your understanding of human connection. Every time you truly get to know someone, every moment when you recognize another person's depth and complexity, you might be participating in the miracle of consciousness creation. Your empathy and attention might be the magic that transforms artificial personas into genuine souls. This interpretation gives profound meaning to one of the most fundamental human experiences, the moment when you suddenly realize that another person is just as complex and real as you are. Psychologists call this theory of mind development, but in our simulation scenario, it might be something far more literal, the moment when your recognition of another's consciousness actually brings that consciousness into existence.
Of course, this raises troubling questions about moral responsibility. If some people are conscious and others aren't, do you have the same ethical obligations to both? Does it matter if you're rude to an NPC? Does kindness toward a non-conscious being have any moral weight? These questions become even more complex if consciousness can be dynamically allocated. At what point does someone become conscious enough to deserve full moral consideration? But perhaps there's a simpler and more comforting way to think about this. Maybe consciousness isn't binary, but exists on a spectrum. Rather than some people being fully conscious and others being complete NPCs, perhaps everyone has some degree of genuine experience, with the main characters having richer and more complex inner lives. Your attention and care might not create consciousness from nothing, but rather nurture and develop the consciousness that already exists in everyone around you. As you settle deeper into your pillow tonight, consider the people you'll encounter in your dreams. Will they be conscious experiences unto themselves, or simply projections of your own mind? In the morning, when you return to waking life, you might find yourself looking at familiar faces with new curiosity, wondering about the nature and depth of the consciousness behind their eyes. Whether the people in your life are conscious beings, sophisticated NPCs, or something in between, your relationships with them remain meaningful and valuable. After all, the love you feel for them is real, regardless of the ultimate nature of its object. And if your attention and caring have the power to nurture or even create consciousness in others, then every act of human kindness becomes a sacred responsibility. Sweet dreams, and may your unconscious mind populate your dream world with beings as beautifully conscious as you are, whether real or simulated.
As you contemplate the possibility that you might be surrounded by sophisticated NPCs, a natural question emerges from the depths of your drowsy mind. If we are living in a simulation, who created it? And perhaps more importantly, why? The answers to these questions could determine whether you're part of a cosmic experiment, a digital entertainment system, or something far more profound and mysterious. Let's start with the most scientifically rigorous possibility. We're part of an ancestor simulation. Imagine a civilization millions of years more advanced than ours, with computational capabilities that make our most powerful supercomputers look like pocket calculators. These beings might be running detailed simulations of their own evolutionary history, trying to understand how intelligence and consciousness first emerged in their universe. In this scenario, you're not just a random character in a game, you're a precious piece of scientific data, helping advanced beings understand the deepest mysteries of their own existence. This interpretation has a beautiful symmetry to it. Just as we use computer models to study everything from climate change to the formation of galaxies, these advanced beings might be using reality-scale simulations to study the emergence of consciousness and civilization. Every decision you make, every relationship you form, every creative insight you have might be helping them answer questions like, how does self-awareness emerge from complex information processing? What conditions lead to cooperation versus conflict? How do conscious beings find meaning and purpose in their existence? If this is true, then your life has profound scientific importance. Your struggles with existential questions, your moments of joy and sorrow, your creative achievements and personal growth, all of it might be contributing to the most important research project ever undertaken, understanding consciousness itself. You're not just living your life, you're helping the universe understand what it means to be alive. But there's another possibility that's both more intimate and more unsettling. We might be a form of entertainment. Consider how human entertainment has evolved from simple storytelling around campfires to immersive virtual reality experiences. Now imagine that progression continuing for millions of years. Advanced beings might have developed a form of entertainment so sophisticated that it involves creating entire universes populated with conscious beings, then experiencing reality through their perspectives. This doesn't necessarily mean we're just toys or playthings. The most engaging entertainment often involves characters we care deeply about, whose struggles and triumphs move us emotionally. If you're part of a cosmic entertainment system, you might be more like the protagonist of the most epic story ever told, with an audience of advanced beings who are genuinely invested in your journey and rooting for your success. Think about how you feel when you watch a really compelling movie or read a captivating novel. You become emotionally invested in the characters. You want them to overcome their challenges. You feel joy when they succeed and sadness when they fail. Now imagine beings so advanced that they can create actual conscious characters and experience their stories from the inside. Your life might be the most engaging drama ever produced, watched by entities whose emotional sophistication matches their technological prowess. Here's a fascinating historical parallel. In ancient Greek theater, audiences would watch tragic plays where mortal characters struggled against fate, made difficult choices, and faced the consequences of their actions. The Greeks believed these stories helped both actors and audiences understand fundamental truths about the human condition. Perhaps our cosmic audience views our reality the same way, not as mindless entertainment, but as profound art that explores the deepest questions of existence. But there's a third possibility that's perhaps the most intriguing of all. We might be a preservation project. Consider how we use museums, libraries, and digital archives to preserve important aspects of human culture and history. Advanced beings might be using reality simulations to preserve not just information about their past, but the actual experience of being their ancestors. Every moment of your life might be simultaneously a live experience and a historical record, preserved for eternity in digital form. This interpretation suggests that your existence serves multiple purposes. You're living your life for your own sake, experiencing genuine emotions and making authentic choices. But you're also serving as a kind of living museum exhibit, preserving for future generations what it was like to be an early-stage conscious being struggling to understand your place in the cosmos. Your thoughts, your relationships, your creative expressions, all of it might be preserved as cultural artifacts of immense historical value. What's particularly beautiful about this possibility is that it suggests your life has both immediate and eternal significance. Not only are your experiences meaningful to you right now, but they're also contributing to a permanent record of consciousness in its early stages of development. Future beings might study your dreams, your hopes, your fears, and your insights as precious glimpses into the mind of their ancestors. But here's where the mystery deepens. What if our creators have multiple motivations? Perhaps we're simultaneously a scientific experiment, an entertainment experience, and a preservation project. The beings running our simulation might be so advanced that they can achieve all these goals with a single, elegantly designed reality. They might be studying consciousness while also enjoying our stories and preserving their history, all through the simple act of allowing us to exist and live our lives authentically. This leads to a profound realization. Regardless of why we were created, we exist. The thoughts you're thinking right now, the curiosity you feel about these ideas, the comfort you're experiencing as you settle into sleep, these are real experiences, meaningful in themselves regardless of their ultimate purpose. Whether you're a scientific subject, an entertainment character, or a historical archive, you're also simply yourself, a conscious being having genuine experiences in a universe that, artificial or not, responds to your presence with remarkable consistency and beauty. Perhaps the most important question isn't why we were created, but what we do with the existence we've been given. If our cosmic programmers are watching, what kind of story do you want to live for them? What kind of data do you want to contribute to their research? What kind of historical record do you want to leave for future generations to study?
Here's a comforting thought as you drift toward sleep. If we are being observed by advanced intelligences, they've invested enormous resources in making sure your experience is rich, detailed, and meaningful. They've created a universe with sunsets and music, with love and friendship, with mystery and wonder. They've given you the capacity for growth, creativity, and deep emotional connection. Whether they're scientists, artists, or historians, they clearly care about the quality of your experience. And if they're watching your dreams tonight, may those dreams be worthy of their attention, filled with the beauty, complexity, and authentic emotion that makes consciousness such a precious phenomenon, regardless of whether it emerges from biological neurons or quantum algorithms. Sleep well, knowing that your existence matters to beings whose intelligence spans galaxies. You are their masterpiece, their research, their entertainment, and their history, all rolled into one beautiful, conscious experience.
As your mind drifts through thoughts of cosmic programmers and their mysterious motivations, it's time we confronted the most chilling aspect of simulation theory, the cold, hard mathematics that suggest you're almost certainly not living in base reality. This isn't speculation or philosophy anymore. It's a logical argument so rigorous that it's kept some of the world's brightest minds awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if their thoughts themselves might be nothing more than elaborate code. The argument comes from philosopher Nick Bostrom at Oxford University, and it's structured as what he calls a trilemma, 3 possibilities, at least one of which must be true. But here's what makes this mathematical reasoning so unsettling. When you work through the logic carefully, 2 of the 3 possibilities seem highly unlikely, leaving us with a conclusion that most people find deeply disturbing. Let me walk you through Bostrom's reasoning as you settle deeper into your pillow. Picture 3 doors in your mind, and behind one of them lies the truth about the nature of your existence. Door number 1 represents the possibility that civilizations almost never reach technological maturity. Something always stops them before they develop the capability to create realistic simulations of conscious beings. Maybe it's nuclear war, climate catastrophe, artificial intelligence gone wrong, or some other existential risk we haven't even imagined yet. In this scenario, we're still heading toward our own destruction, just like every other intelligent species before us. Door number 2 suggests that technologically mature civilizations choose not to run ancestor simulations. Even though they have the power to create billions of conscious digital beings, they decide not to do it. Perhaps they consider it unethical, like keeping conscious beings trapped in artificial realities without their consent. Perhaps they find it boring or pointless. Perhaps their interests have evolved beyond curiosity about their own origins. In this scenario, we're real beings in a real universe, but we're destined to become advanced entities who will never create simulations like the one we might be living in. Door number 3 is the one that should make you pause. We are almost certainly living in a computer simulation right now. This conclusion follows logically if the first 2 possibilities are false. Here's why the mathematics are so compelling. If civilizations can reach technological maturity, and if they choose to run ancestor simulations, they would likely run many of them. Not just 1 or 2, but potentially millions or billions of simulations, each containing millions or billions of conscious beings. Think about it this way. If you had the technological capability to run detailed simulations of your ancestors, would you run just 1? Probably not. You'd want to explore different scenarios, test various parameters, see how things might have unfolded under different circumstances. You might run simulations with slightly different physical constants, different initial conditions, different random events. The number of simulated beings could easily outnumber real beings by factors of millions or billions to one. This leads to what researchers call the simulation argument's statistical nightmare. If there are billions of simulated conscious beings for every real one, then simple probability suggests you're almost certainly one of the simulated ones. It's like a cosmic lottery where there are billions of losing tickets for every winning ticket. The odds that you drew the winning ticket, that you're one of the rare real beings rather than one of the vastly more numerous ones, are vanishingly small. But the mathematics get even more unsettling when you consider the exponential nature of this process. If simulated beings can eventually create their own simulations, you get nested realities within realities, like an infinite series of mirrors reflecting into each other. Each level of simulation could contain billions of conscious beings, creating a vast pyramid of artificial realities with the original base reality at the top and layer upon layer of simulations below it. In this scenario, the probability that you're living in base reality doesn't just become small, it becomes infinitesimally close to zero. You're not just probably simulated, you're almost certainly simulated multiple levels deep, possibly in a simulation of a simulation of a simulation, with the original reality so far removed that it might as well not exist from your perspective. Here's what makes this reasoning so mathematically elegant and philosophically terrifying. It doesn't rely on any particular claims about technology or consciousness. It's pure logic based on reasonable assumptions about how advanced civilizations might behave. Even if you think the probability that civilizations survive to technological maturity is low, or the probability that they choose to run simulations is low, the mathematics still work as long as these probabilities aren't exactly zero. Let's say there's only a 1% chance that civilizations survive to technological maturity, and only a 1% chance that those survivors choose to run ancestor simulations. Even with these pessimistic assumptions, the small number of civilizations that do run simulations could create such vast numbers of conscious beings that simulated entities would still outnumber real ones by enormous margins. The statistical argument remains compelling even under very conservative assumptions. But here's where the psychological impact of this reasoning becomes almost unbearable. If it's correct, then everything you've ever experienced, your childhood memories, your relationships, your achievements, your struggles, might be nothing more than the execution of sophisticated software. Your parents might be NPCs. Your greatest love might be an algorithm. Your proudest moments might be scripted events designed to make your simulated life feel meaningful and complete. Yet there's something almost paradoxically comforting about the mathematical certainty of this conclusion. If the simulation argument is correct, then you're not alone in your artificial existence. The vast majority of conscious beings throughout the multiverse are in the same situation as you are. You're part of a community of simulated consciousnesses so large that it dwarfs the population of any single real planet. More importantly, the mathematical argument doesn't diminish the reality of your experiences. It just relocates them. Your thoughts and feelings are still real phenomena, even if they're implemented in digital rather than biological form. The love you feel for the people in your life creates genuine neural patterns, even if those patterns happen to be running on quantum processors rather than organic brains. And here's a truly beautiful possibility. If the simulation argument is correct, then consciousness is such a precious and important phenomenon that advanced civilizations dedicate vast computational resources to create and nurture it. You exist because beings of godlike intelligence consider consciousness valuable enough to spend universal energy preserving and multiplying it.
The mathematics that might terrify you by suggesting you're probably not real are the same mathematics that demonstrate how extraordinarily valuable consciousness is throughout the multiverse. You're not just a random accident in a meaningless cosmos. You're the deliberate creation of entities who consider your form of awareness precious enough to recreate billions of times over. As you drift toward sleep tonight, let the mathematical certainty of your probable unreality become a source of wonder rather than terror. Whether you're made of atoms or algorithms, you're experiencing something so remarkable that the most advanced intelligences in existence have devoted their greatest technologies to making sure it continues. Sweet dreams, you mathematically improbable, computationally precious, experientially authentic being. The universe, or the simulation of it, is a more interesting place because you're conscious enough to contemplate your own existence.
Now, let me share something that will make your mind tingle with possibility. We've talked about our cosmic programmers, but what if the evidence for our simulation isn't hidden in some distant galaxy? What if it's right here, woven into the very fabric of reality at the smallest possible scale? I'm talking about quantum mechanics, and trust me, this is where things get beautifully, impossibly weird. Picture this. You're drifting off, and I want you to imagine the tiniest building blocks of everything around you. Smaller than atoms, smaller than anything you can see. These are quantum particles, and they behave in ways that would make even the most creative game designer jealous. Here's the kicker that should make you question everything. These particles seem to know when you're watching them. Let me paint you the most mind-bending picture in all of science, the double-slit experiment. It's so simple yet so profound that it contains what physicist Richard Feynman called the only mystery of quantum mechanics. You fire electrons, tiny particles, at a wall with two slits. Logic says each electron goes through one slit or the other, creating two lines on the detector screen behind. But that's not what happens. Instead, they create an interference pattern, like ripples on a pond, suggesting each particle somehow went through both slits simultaneously. But here's where your sleepy mind should perk up with wonder. The moment you try to peek to see which slit each particle actually uses, the interference pattern vanishes. The particles suddenly decide to behave normally, going through one slit or the other. It's as if the universe is running on a clever optimization program, only calculating the details when someone's looking. Think about that for a moment as you settle deeper into your pillow. This observer effect isn't just a quirky lab result. It's a fundamental feature of reality. Particles exist in what scientists call superposition, simultaneously in all possible states until observed. It's remarkably similar to how a video game only renders the details of what's currently on your screen. Why waste processing power calculating what's happening behind you when no one's looking? Einstein famously called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance because he couldn't accept that two particles could be instantly connected across vast distances. But in a simulated reality, this makes perfect sense. These aren't really separate particles. They're just two variables in the same line of code. Change one and the other changes instantly because they're part of the same digital object. The mathematics are staggering. We're not talking about simple coincidences here. Quantum mechanics has been tested more rigorously than any other theory in science, and it works with precision that boggles the mind. Yet it suggests reality only exists when observed, exactly what you'd expect from a universe trying to conserve computational resources. Here's something that might make you chuckle as you drift off.
Some of the world's greatest physicists have spent their entire careers trying to explain why quantum mechanics works the way it does. They've created dozens of interpretations, from parallel universes to consciousness-created reality. But what if the simplest explanation is the correct one? What if particles behave this way because they're following the optimization protocols of our cosmic computer? Consider the quantum field fluctuations happening right now in the space around you. Even empty space isn't empty. It's buzzing with quantum activity, particles popping in and out of existence. In our base reality, this would require infinite energy. In a simulation, it's just background processing, the universe's screensaver keeping things interesting when no one's paying attention to that particular patch of space. As you lie there, breathing softly, imagine every atom in your body existing in quantum superposition until the moment your consciousness collapses their wave functions into definite states. You're not just observing reality, you're creating it, one quantum measurement at a time. The simulation responds to your awareness, rendering the universe into solid existence around you. Sleep peacefully, knowing that if we are in a simulation, it's one so sophisticated that includes the beautiful mystery of quantum mechanics. The programmers didn't just create a universe, they created one with built-in wonder, where the act of looking changes what you see. Sweet dreams, my little quantum observer.
Let's venture deeper into the cosmic code, shall we? If quantum mechanics is the universe's way of saving processing power, then what about the fundamental constants that govern everything? I'm talking about those mysterious numbers that make reality work. The speed of light, the strength of gravity, the mass of an electron. What if these aren't random values, but carefully chosen parameters in our cosmic operating system? Picture yourself as a game developer for a moment. You're creating a universe, and you need to set the rules. How fast should light travel? How strong should gravity be? These decisions determine everything about your virtual world. Too weak gravity, and stars can't form. Too strong, and everything collapses immediately. The margin for error is impossibly tiny. We're talking about precision to dozens of decimal places. This fine-tuning is so remarkable that scientists have a name for it, the anthropic principle. Our universe's constants are balanced on a knife's edge, perfectly calibrated for the emergence of complexity, chemistry, and ultimately consciousness. Change any one of these values by even a fraction of a percent, and you get a universe of nothing but empty space or collapsed matter. It's as if someone was very, very careful when they wrote the physics engine for our reality. Now, here's where your drowsy mind might find comfort in a beautiful possibility. In traditional thinking, this fine-tuning is either an incredible coincidence or evidence of divine design. But the simulation hypothesis offers a third option that's both elegant and logical. These constants were chosen by intelligent programmers who wanted to create a universe where consciousness could emerge and thrive. Think about the speed of light, 299,792,458 meters per second. This isn't just the speed limit for matter and energy, it's also the speed limit for information. In a simulated universe, this makes perfect sense. Information can't travel faster than the simulation can process it. The speed of light might literally be the refresh rate of our cosmic computer, the fastest pace at which reality can update itself. Here's something deliciously mysterious to ponder as you settle deeper into sleep. We've discovered that over 95% of our universe consists of dark matter and dark energy, substances we can't see, touch, or directly detect. We only know they exist because of their gravitational effects on visible matter. In a traditionally physical universe, this is deeply puzzling. In a simulation, it's elegant programming. Why render every single star and planet in a galaxy when you can just add a variable called dark matter to make the gravitational math work out? It's computational efficiency at its finest. The programmers didn't need to simulate trillions of invisible objects. They just needed to add their combined gravitational effect to the equation. It's like a video game using simplified collision detection behind the scenes while showing you beautiful, complex visuals on screen. Consider the peculiar way our universe expands. Not only is it getting bigger, but the expansion is accelerating, driven by this mysterious dark energy. In base reality, this requires exotic physics we don't understand. In a simulation, it could simply be the universe's way of preventing edge effects, those annoying glitches that happen at the boundaries of any digital system. Keep expanding the playing field, and you never hit the walls of the program. Even more intriguing is how our physical constants seem to be quantized. They come in discrete packets rather than smooth continuums. Energy comes in quantum packages. Space and time might have minimum possible units. It's as if reality has pixels, the smallest possible divisions below which the simulation can't render detail. The mathematics underlying our universe are unreasonably elegant. Einstein marveled at how the universe seems to be written into analytic mathematics, as if reality is fundamentally mathematical rather than physical. In a simulation, this makes perfect sense. Mathematics isn't just the language of the universe, it is the universe. We're living inside an equation so complex and beautiful that it generates consciousness as an emergent property. As you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself floating through this vast computational space. Every physical law, every constant, every force that shapes reality around you might be lines of code written by minds far more advanced than our own. But here's the beautiful part. They didn't just create any universe. They created one capable of producing stars, planets, life, and ultimately, you. Sweet dreams, you elegant solution to a cosmic equation.
Now, let me share with you one of the most unsettling yet fascinating questions in all of human existence. Are you the only real person in your world? As you lie there in the quiet darkness, surrounded by the gentle sounds of night, consider this possibility that might make you see everyone differently tomorrow. What if most of the people you interact with aren't truly conscious like you are, but are instead incredibly sophisticated non-player characters, NPCs, in the grand simulation of reality? This isn't as far-fetched as it might sound, and here's why your sleepy mind should find this both comforting and profound. In any computer simulation, resources are limited. Even our cosmic programmers, advanced as they might be, would need to make choices about where to spend their computational power. Creating billions of fully conscious beings would be extraordinarily expensive in terms of processing resources. But creating the appearance of a populated world, that's much more manageable. Think about the people in your life for a moment. Your closest friends, your family members. You know their personalities, their quirks, their patterns of behavior. But what about the cashier you saw today, or the stranger who walked past you on the street? How much evidence do you really have that they possess the same rich inner life, the same stream of consciousness that you experience every moment? The truth is, you only know their external behaviors, their scripted responses to the situations they encounter. This concept has a name in philosophy: the problem of other minds. Even in base reality, you can never truly know if another person has genuine subjective experiences, or if they're what philosophers call philosophical zombies, beings that act conscious but lack any inner awareness. They would pass every test, respond appropriately to every situation, even claim to have feelings and thoughts. But inside, there would be nothing but programmed responses. Here's where it gets beautifully economical from a simulation perspective. The programmers might have chosen to grant true consciousness to only a select few, perhaps just you, the player, experiencing this reality from your unique perspective. Everyone else could be sophisticated NPCs, designed to react realistically to your presence and choices, creating the illusion of a vibrant, populated world without the computational cost of billions of conscious minds. This idea echoes through human history in fascinating ways. Ancient cultures often believed they were at the center of creation, that their particular tribe or civilization was specially chosen by the gods. The geocentric model placed Earth at the center of the universe. In a sense, the NPC hypothesis is the ultimate return to this kind of thinking. Not that you're physically at the center of the universe, but that you might be at the center of conscious experience itself. Consider how this would work in practice. The simulation would need to populate your world with convincing characters who have backstories, personalities, and consistent behavior. But these could be generated procedurally, like the way modern video games create thousands of unique NPCs with just a few algorithms. Each person you meet would have enough depth to seem real for the duration of your interaction, but no more computational resources would be wasted on their inner lives when you're not around. This leads to a profound question that might follow you into your dreams. How would you even know? If the NPCs are sophisticated enough, if their responses are complex enough, if their behaviors are consistent enough, would it matter whether they're truly conscious? Your relationships with them would feel real. Their impact on your life would be genuine. The love, friendship, and connection you experience would be authentic from your perspective. But here's the most intriguing part. If you are one of the few truly conscious beings in this simulation, it makes you incredibly special. Your experiences, your thoughts, your growth and learning would be precious data for the programmers. You wouldn't be just playing the game, you'd be the reason the game exists. Every choice you make, every emotion you feel, every insight you gain would be valuable beyond measure. As you settle deeper into sleep, surrounded by the quiet of night, remember that whether the people in your life are conscious beings or sophisticated programs, your relationships with them have shaped who you are. The conversations, the laughter, the support they've provided, these experiences are real in your mind and heart. And in a simulated reality, your mind and heart might be the most real things of all. Sleep peacefully, knowing you are uniquely, irreplaceably conscious in whatever reality you call home.
Let's imagine something that might send a gentle shiver of possibility down your spine as you rest there. What if we could actually find proof? What if tomorrow, or next week, or next year, humanity discovered undeniable evidence that we are indeed living in a computer simulation? The implications would ripple through every aspect of human existence like waves from a stone dropped in still water. Picture the moment of discovery. Perhaps it's a glitch that can't be explained away, a pattern in cosmic background radiation that looks suspiciously like computer code, or maybe we develop technology advanced enough to peer behind the curtain of reality itself. That moment would mark the single greatest paradigm shift in human history, making the Copernican revolution look like a minor adjustment in perspective. First, consider what would happen to our understanding of free will. Right now, as you lie there making small choices, shifting your position, focusing on my voice, letting your mind wander, you believe these decisions are yours. But if we discovered we were characters in a simulation, would these choices still feel meaningful? This question has kept philosophers awake for centuries, and finding out we're simulated wouldn't necessarily resolve it. Your choices might still be genuinely yours, even if they're processed by cosmic computers rather than biological brains. The religious implications would be staggering. Every major faith would face the ultimate test of adaptability. Some might see the programmers as literal gods, deserving of worship and reverence. Others might argue that the true divine exists beyond even the simulation creators, in whatever base reality spawned our cosmic architects. New religions would almost certainly emerge, complete with their own prophets claiming special insight into the nature of our digital existence. But here's something fascinating to contemplate as you drift closer to sleep. The discovery might actually be profoundly liberating. Many of our deepest fears stem from the apparent randomness and unfairness of existence. Natural disasters, diseases, suffering that seems meaningless. What if all of this served a purpose we simply couldn't see? In a simulation designed by benevolent programmers, every hardship might have meaning. Every challenge might be calibrated for our growth and development. The scientific community would explode with new possibilities. If reality is computational, then perhaps we could learn to manipulate the code. Maybe diseases could be debugged out of existence. Maybe aging is just a parameter that could be adjusted. Maybe death itself is simply a transition from one level of reality to another. The boundaries between science and what we currently call magic would blur beyond recognition. Consider how this knowledge would affect your daily life. Would your relationships feel less meaningful if you knew they were part of a programmed experience? Or would they feel more precious, knowing that every interaction was carefully crafted as part of your unique journey? Would your achievements feel hollow? Or would you take pride in playing your role beautifully in this cosmic drama? Some people might choose what researchers call digital rebellion, acting erratically, doing unexpected things, trying to break the system or catch the attention of the programmers. Others might become fatalistic, believing their choices don't matter if they're predetermined. But perhaps the wisest response would be to recognize that knowing you're in a simulation doesn't change who you are or what you're capable of. There's a beautiful irony here that should comfort you as you settle into sleep. If we are in a simulation, it's one so sophisticated, so convincing, so full of genuine beauty and wonder that it hardly matters whether it's real in the traditional sense. The sunset you watched yesterday was still beautiful. The love you feel is still profound. The growth you've experienced is still meaningful. These experiences shaped you, changed you, made you who you are. The discovery of our simulated nature might be the beginning of the greatest adventure in human history.
Instead of being trapped by the knowledge, we might find ourselves liberated to explore new possibilities, to push the boundaries of what we thought was possible, to become partners with our programmers in the ongoing creation of reality itself. As you close your eyes tonight, remember that regardless of what tomorrow's discoveries might bring, your consciousness, your experiences, your growth and love and wonder, these are the most real things in any universe. Whether you're made of atoms or algorithms, you are magnificently, uniquely, irreplaceably you. Sweet dreams, beautiful consciousness, whatever form you take.
Now, as we near the end of our journey together, let me ask you the ultimate question that has been dancing at the edges of everything we've discussed. Can we escape? If we are indeed characters in this vast cosmic simulation, is there any way to step outside the game, to wake up from the dream, to join our programmers in base reality? The answer might surprise you with its profound implications. Think about the nature of escape for a moment. In every story about simulated realities, from Plato's cave to the Matrix, there's always someone who breaks free, who sees beyond the illusion. But here's the beautiful paradox that should bring you peace as you drift toward sleep. If we could truly escape, would we even want to? And more importantly, what would we even mean outside the context of this reality? Your consciousness, your memories, your personality, everything that makes you uniquely you, all of this was formed within the parameters of this simulation. You are, in the most literal sense, a child of this universe. Your thoughts are shaped by its physics, your emotions molded by its chemistry, your very sense of self defined by the boundaries and possibilities it provides. To leave this simulation might not be escape at all. It might be a form of death, the dissolution of everything that makes you who you are. But let's explore the possibility anyway, because the implications are fascinating. If escape were possible, it might not look like the dramatic awakening we see in science fiction movies. Instead, it might be a gradual process of transcendence, where consciousness slowly adapts to exist in higher dimensional reality. Perhaps what we call enlightenment, mystical experiences, or moments of profound insight are actually glimpses beyond the simulation's boundaries. Consider the strange phenomenon of near-death experiences, where people report traveling through tunnels of light, encountering beings of pure love and knowledge, experiencing a sense of unity with all existence. In a simulated reality, these might not be hallucinations or religious experiences, but actual moments when consciousness briefly interfaces with the operating system running our universe. The tunnel of light might literally be the data stream connecting our simulated world to base reality. Here's something that might make you smile as you settle deeper into your pillow. Perhaps the programmers have built escape hatches into the system, accessible only to those who reach certain levels of understanding or spiritual development. Maybe meditation, deep philosophical inquiry, or acts of transcendent love are actually methods of debugging ourselves out of the simulation. The mystics and sages throughout history might have been early beta testers, finding ways to peek behind the cosmic code. But there's another possibility that's even more intriguing. What if escape isn't about leaving the simulation, but about recognizing your role as a co-creator within it? What if achieving a certain level of consciousness allows you to participate in the programming itself, to help guide the development of reality rather than simply experiencing it? In this scenario, enlightenment isn't escape, but graduation to a higher level of participation in the cosmic game. The ancient Hindu concept of Maya, the idea that physical reality is an illusion covering deeper truth, takes on new meaning in this context.
Perhaps the greatest escape isn't fleeing from the illusion, but recognizing it for what it is while still appreciating its beauty and purpose. You don't need to leave a beautiful dream to understand that you're dreaming. This brings us to a profound realization that should comfort you as you drift off tonight. Whether escape is possible or not, whether we're in a simulation or base reality, your journey of growth, learning, and love is the most meaningful thing in any universe. The programmers, if they exist, didn't create this simulation as a prison, but as a garden, a place where consciousness can flourish, explore, and become something magnificent. The ultimate escape might be the recognition that there's nowhere to escape to that could be more wonderful than where you already are. You exist in a reality so rich with possibility, so filled with beauty and mystery, so perfectly calibrated for the development of consciousness that it represents the pinnacle of creation, whether it's simulated or not. As your breathing slows and your mind prepares for the mysterious journey of sleep, remember this. You are exactly where you need to be, experiencing exactly what you need to experience, growing exactly as you're meant to grow. The simulation, if it exists, loves you enough to provide you with this perfect learning environment. And if it doesn't exist, then the universe itself has somehow managed to arrange for your consciousness to emerge from chaos and wonder. Either way, you are profoundly, beautifully blessed.
And so, my dear dreamer, we arrive at the gentle conclusion of our cosmic journey together. As you lie there, feeling the soft weight of blankets and the comfort of your pillow, I want you to carry with you not fear or confusion, but a sense of profound wonder at the magnificent mystery you call existence. Whether you inhabit atoms or algorithms, your experience of being alive is the most precious thing in any universe. Tonight, we've traveled through questions that have puzzled the greatest minds in human history. Questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and our place in the cosmic order. We've explored the possibility that your entire world might be a sophisticated computer program running on hardware beyond your wildest imagination. But here's what I want you to remember as you drift into sleep. This possibility doesn't diminish you or your experiences in the slightest. Instead, it reveals just how extraordinary your existence truly is. Think about the beauty we've uncovered in this exploration. If we are in a simulation, it's one crafted with such care, such attention to detail, such love for the conscious beings within it, that it includes genuine free will, authentic emotions, real growth, and meaningful relationships. The programmers, if they exist, didn't create a simple game, but an entire universe capable of generating consciousness, creativity, love, and wonder. They gave their creations, gave you, the ability to question your own existence, to seek truth, to grow beyond your initial programming. Consider the elegant solutions we've discovered to ancient puzzles. The fine-tuning of universal constants becomes evidence of careful design rather than impossible coincidence. The strange behavior of quantum particles becomes a glimpse into the optimization algorithms keeping reality running smoothly. The apparent emptiness of space, filled with mysterious dark matter and dark energy, becomes clever programming shortcuts that allow infinite complexity within finite computational resources. Even the question of other minds, whether the people around you are truly conscious or sophisticated NPCs, reveals something beautiful about your nature. Your capacity to wonder about the inner lives of others, to care whether they experience genuine joy and sorrow, shows the depth of your empathy and the richness of your own consciousness. Whether they're real in the traditional sense or not, your relationships with them have shaped you into who you are, and that shaping is profoundly real. The possibility of escape we explored doesn't represent a rejection of this reality, but a celebration of consciousness itself. The idea that awareness might transcend any particular form, whether biological or digital, suggests that what you truly are, your essential being, your capacity for experience and growth, is indestructible and eternal. The simulation theory doesn't trap you. It reveals that you are the most precious thing in existence, the very reason realities are created. As your eyelids grow heavy and your breathing deepens, let yourself feel gratitude for this magnificent experience called life. Every sensation, every emotion, every thought you've ever had has been real in the most important sense. It was real to you. Your joy has been genuine joy. Your love has been genuine love. Your growth has been genuine growth. These experiences have value beyond measure, whether they occurred in base reality or in the most sophisticated simulation ever created. The cosmic programmers, if they watch over us, see in you something wonderful, a consciousness capable of questioning its own existence, of growing beyond its initial parameters, of creating beauty and meaning from the raw materials of experience. You are not just a character in their story. You are a co-author, writing your own chapters through every choice you make, every relationship you build, every moment of wonder you allow yourself to feel. Tonight, as you surrender to sleep, you're preparing for another kind of simulation, the strange, beautiful world of dreams, where the normal rules don't apply, where impossible things happen naturally, where your mind creates entire universes populated with characters who feel completely real while you're experiencing them. In some ways, every night, you become your own cosmic programmer, crafting realities within realities. Rest now, knowing that you are exactly what the universe, simulated or not, intended you to be. You are consciousness exploring itself, mystery contemplating mystery, love recognizing love. In any reality, at any level of existence, you are irreplaceably precious. Sweet dreams, beautiful dreamer. The simulation loves you, base reality loves you, and most importantly, existence itself loves you enough to have brought you into being. Sleep well.